I moved to this small town in Vermont a few months back. I was excited about my new job as a social worker at the old orphanage. I'd just turned 36, and I thought I could really make a difference. When I pulled up to the orphanage, I felt like I was stepping into a new beginning. But I soon realized that the place was different than I expected. At first, the town felt charming. The quaint buildings and thick forests made it feel so welcoming. I could smell fresh pine in the air. But as I got closer to the orphanage, my stomach tightened. The sign out front was cracked and faded. When I knocked on the door, it creaked open, revealing dusty halls inside. A chill ran down my spine as I wandered through the empty rooms, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. I had always wanted to help kids, so when I found an old file cabinet crammed in a corner, I thought it might give me answers. I opened a drawer. It was full of papers, financial reports, budget summaries. But there were no records of kids being admitted since the 1990s. My heart raced. I glanced around, waiting for someone to confront me, but only silence filled the air. That I wanted to believe it was just an oversight, maybe a missing file. But as I sifted through the papers, my unease deepened. The lights flickered above me. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just faulty wiring. Then, I thought I saw a shadow shift outside a window. I turned, but there was nothing. I felt cold. Days went by, and I asked townsfolk about the orphanage. They gave vague answers. It's a place of memories, they said. You don't need to worry about it. I felt unwelcome, like a weight settled on my shoulders. One evening at the diner, an old woman fidgeted when I mentioned my new job. You should leave it alone, she said. I noticed her eyes darting toward the door. The other patrons paused mid-bite, staring at me. Confusion twisted inside me, but my unease grew stronger. I returned to the orphanage that night, determined to face whatever was haunting me. The shadows flickered again, clearer this time. My heart raced as I walked toward a window. As I got closer, I felt a presence wrap around me. Then, a voice echoed in my head. Why do you care? I froze, looking toward the woods. They felt alive, as if they were watching me. Something deep inside whispered that I was uncovering a dark truth. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. I want to escape, but I don't know how. I feel something lurking, something watching me. I'm not sure if I'm losing my grip on reality or if the town hides secrets. I only know that I can't shake this feeling that something is terribly wrong. What will happen next? The door felt heavy against my back, but I pushed anyway, desperate to get out. It didn't budge, as if the shadows had fused it to the frame. I pounded on it, panic rising in my throat. Let me out. Please. My voice echoed through the emptiness, but there was no answer. As I stepped back, I glanced around the room. The flickering lights painted everything in a strobe-like haze. I didn't want to be here anymore. I turned, searching for another way out. The darkness seemed to shift and curl around me, wrapping tighter with every breath. That's when I heard it. A soft whisper echoed in my ear, too faint to decipher. My heart raced. I stumbled backward, pressing against the door. Show yourself. I shouted, my voice a mix of courage and fear. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the whisper quieted. A feeling of weightlessness washed over me. I focused my gaze ahead and noticed something out of place, a door ajar at the end of the hall, faintly illuminated by the flickering lights. Cautiously, I approached. My footsteps creaked on the wooden floor. The world felt quieter, as if the whole house was holding its breath. I peered inside. The room was smaller, cluttered with boxes and dusty furniture. But on the wall hung a large, framed photograph. I stepped closer, and my heart sank. The photo showed a group of children. They all wore bright smiles, but the faces were blurred, like they were fading from memory. Confusion washed over me. Who were they? Why hadn't I seen this before? I scanned the room for answers, but all I found were old toys and overturned chairs, then my gaze landed on a piece of paper pinned to the wall beside the photo. I leaned in. There were names scribbled on it, each marked with a date from long ago. Adopted next to some. Pending next to others. But the last entry sent a chill down my spine. It simply read, "Lost." I stumbled back, shaking my head. Was this some kind of joke? I tore my eyes away and glanced back at the door. Faint whispers fluttered around me again, sounding urgent, pleading. I felt sick. Suddenly, I remembered the old woman at the diner. "You should leave it alone." My pulse quickened. Did she know something? I felt a mix of anger and fear. I wasn't about to let fear keep me from the truth that I turned back to the list. That S when I saw it, a name that sent ice through my veins. One of the children had the same last name as mine. I stumbled back, heart pounding. What did it mean? I had to know. But before I could process it, the lights flickered violently, and the whispers transformed into frantic cries. Someone, or something, was angry. The air felt electric, charged with energy. Then it all went dark that I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. My instincts screamed for me to run, but where? What had I uncovered? And who was really watching me in the dark? I gasped for air, my lungs burning in the thick darkness. The silence felt suffocating, all-consuming. Panic tightened its grip around me, and I stumbled forward, arms reaching out, desperate to find something solid. I had to get out. I had to escape. Suddenly, a faint glimmer cut through the blackness ahead. I blinked, focusing on it, and realized it was a sliver of light under another door. My heart raced as I edged toward it, hope battling the fear coursing through my veins. As I neared the door, I could hear faint sounds, muffled speech, laughter. It was a stark contrast to the cold, empty room I had just left that I placed my hand on the door handle, trembling. Should I open it? The memory of the photograph flashed in my mind, the word "lost" lingering like a dark cloud. But curiosity pulled me, overpowering the dread. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The scene before me was surreal. Sunlight poured into the space, illuminating a warm, cheerful room. Colorful drawings lined the walls, and small tables were scattered with art supplies. But the moment I stepped in, the chatter ceased. All the children, at least a dozen, turned to stare at me with wide eyes. Their faces were unmistakably familiar, hauntingly so. "Who are you?" one of the boys asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. It was filled with a blend of awe and fear, like I was a ghost they hadn't expected to see. "I am not sure," I stammered. "I was just lost." A girl interjected. She had pigtails and wore a bright blue dress. "Like us?" Confusion swirled in my mind. "What do you mean, lost?" I asked, scanning their faces for answers. They looked real but strangely out of place. The boy who spoke earlier stepped closer, and I noticed his eyes were filled with tears. "We've been waiting for someone to find us. But no one ever comes." An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I felt a chill rise as I thought of the list I saw earlier. How many names were written there without an ending? "They forget about us," another child said. "Just like all the others." The room felt heavy with unspoken words and shared sorrow. I could almost feel the weight of their stories pressing down on me. I knew I was intruding on something sacred, yet I needed to understand. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Before any of them could respond, the door slammed shut behind me as if someone else had entered. The joyful atmosphere shifted, replaced by tense silence. My heart raced again, and I spun around to see shadows curling around the edges of the room, growing darker and more oppressive. "Don't let it take you," the girl in blue whispered urgently, her eyes wide with fear. I turned to run, but something blocked my path, a dark figure emerging from the shadows, its form shifting like smoke. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze boring into me. "Not everyone who is lost can be found," it seemed to whisper in my mind that I bolted, adrenaline coursing through me, the children's cries ringing in my ears as I turned back toward the door. It was my only chance. Outside, the light flickered ominously, but I had to break through. Whatever was in here with me wanted to keep me trapped that I pushed against the door, panic fueling my strength. The shadows lashed out, trying to drag me back. But I couldn't stop. I had to find the truth about what had happened to the children, and I had to escape before it was too late. The door wouldn't budge. I twisted the handle frantically, desperation surging through me. Every ounce of strength in me pressed against the cold wood as I felt the shadows close in, tendrils wrapping around my ankles. No. Let me go. I screamed, my voice echoing off the walls. Behind me, the children stared wide-eyed, frozen in confusion, fear etched on their faces. I couldn't look back at them. I had to focus on the escape. With one last heave, I threw my shoulder against the door. It jolted open just enough for me to slip through that I stumbled into a narrow corridor. The air was starkly different, alive with a musty smell. I felt the shadows recede but knew they were still nearby. No time to breathe. I ran down the hallway, glancing over my shoulder. The darkness shimmered, threatening to devour me. I rounded a corner and almost crashed into another door. My hand rushed to the handle, but hesitation gripped me. What if it was just another trap? Then I remembered the children's faces, the urgency in the girl's eyes. They were counting on me that I yanked the door open. This room was different, much smaller and colder than the last. Dim light flickered from a single bulb hanging overhead. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, each marked with names I didn't recognize. My heart sank. I scanned them, searching for anything familiar, and then I found it. A box labeled with my name. What? How was this possible? I rushed forward, my hands trembling as I opened the flaps. Inside was a collection of worn photographs, each one a snapshot of a moment I couldn't fully recall: birthday parties, school picnics, and smiling faces I hadn't seen in years. But there was one picture that made my blood run cold. A faded image of the girl in blue, sitting in an empty playground, her joyful smile contrasting the abandoned swings behind her. I recognized that playground. It was just down the street from my old house. What is this? I whispered, my voice shaking. Why do you have this? The dim bulb buzzed, and for a moment that felt like an eternity, the shadows surrounding me stilled, as if waiting. Suddenly, I heard laughter from behind me. Not the innocent laughter of children, but a haunting, taunting cackle. I spun around, but the passage behind me had vanished, replaced by an endless stretch of blackness. What was happening? My breath quickened. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the unseen walls. It was as if the darkness was alive, feasting on my fear. I had to find another way out. Desperation propelled me deeper into the room. There had to be more answers hidden among the boxes. I flung them open, heart racing, every noise amplifying my unease. That's when I saw it. A small, tattered journal peeking from beneath a pile of photographs. I pulled it free, my hands shaking as I opened it. Inside were scrawled notes, distorted drawings resembling the same playground in the photographs. But it was the last page that made my stomach drop. A list: names, dates, all familiar to me, but one stood out. Beside it was my own name, marked with an ominous X. The realization crashed over me like icy water. I wasn't just a visitor here, I was part of this forgotten story. And then, from the corner of my eye, I felt it, the shadows creeping toward me again, the laughter morphing into something far more sinister. The room began to pulse and swell, my surroundings warping. I couldn't stay here. I had to find another way out before it was too late. I bolted towards the farthest corner of the room, scanning for anything that looked like an exit. Panic surged through me, urging my feet to move faster. I threw boxes aside, searching for a hidden door, a window, anything to escape the disorienting shadows that writhed in the dim light. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed in the room, making me jump. A box toppled over, revealing a hidden panel behind it. My heart raced as I approached, hope igniting within me. I pressed against it, my fingers trembling. It was ajar, just enough to slide my hand in. I hesitated, fear. Would I find more photographs? More memories? Or would something worse await me inside? It felt like a choice between chaos and the unknown. With a deep breath, I shoved the panel wider and squeezed through. The narrow space was dark, the air heavy with dust. I could hear the whispers of the shadows behind me, each sound like claws scraping against wood. I stumbled forward, using my hands to guide me. Just as I feared, it didn't lead to freedom. Instead, I emerged in another room, cramped and dark, filled with the smell of mold that I could barely make out the shapes of old toys scattered across the floor. On the wall hung a cracked mirror, reflecting distorted images of myself. That's when I noticed a figure standing in the corner. My heart pounded against my chest. It was just a child, small and fragile, crouched and shivering. "Hey!" I called out, my voice breaking through the tension. The child didn't move, gaze locked on the floor. I took a cautious step closer. "Are you okay?" "Don't," the child whispered, barely audible. "Don't fall asleep." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" I asked, inching nearer. "What is going on?" Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. The temperature dropped sharply, and I could see my breath in the air. The child's eyes darted to the shadows creeping towards us. They looked terrified, and I felt fear clawing at my throat. Before I could react, the shadows surged, engulfing the child. I watched in horror, unable to move. "No! Don't!" I lunged forward, but the darkness swallowed them whole, leaving only a chilling silence that I staggered back, my heart racing, confusion and fear clawing at me. "What just happened?" I gasped, staring at the empty space where the child had been. I couldn't stay. I had to get out. Desperately, I searched the room, fumbling through the toys, my breaths quickening with each passing second. Then, I spotted a door on the far side. Relieved, I rushed to it, my hands trembling as I reached for the handle. The moment I pushed it open, a blinding light flooded my senses. I staggered out, blinking against the brightness. But when my eyes adjusted, I froze in place, panic settling deep in my bones. I was back in the playground from the photographs, the same swings, the same empty slide, eerily still. The laughter had returned, echoing, but now it felt sinister and close. I turned around, half expecting to see shadows lurking behind me. Instead, it was the children. All of them. Their faces were blank, eyes void of emotion. They stood in a line, staring at me like I was the ghost. "Help us," one whispered, her voice barely a breath. I could barely breathe. "What do you want?" I pleaded, fear curling around me like a vice. And just like that, darkness descended, consuming everything once again. I jolted awake in a sweat, my heart hammering in my chest. I was back in the blackness of that room, the playground just a memory, but the fear lingered. The echo of laughter rang in my ears. I stumbled to my feet, clenching my fists, trying to shake off the remnants of the nightmare that I felt heavier than before. I made my way to the door I'd come through, wading through the darkness. I hadn't noticed it before, but as I fumbled around, I found the door was gone. Just an empty wall stretched out before me, cold and unyielding. Panic rose again. I pressed my palms against the wall, searching for any hidden panel, anything that might open up to the outside world. I could feel the air getting heavier, the shadows almost alive, swirling around me in a silent dance of dread. "Not again," I muttered, backing away. That child from earlier, the look of terror on their face, it haunted me. Then I heard a soft thudding, like footsteps approaching. "Who's there?" I called, the tremor in my voice betraying my fear. The footsteps stopped, and an unsettling silence filled the room. Then I saw her. A girl, no older than 8, stepped out from the darkness. But she was not like the others. Her eyes were wide, brimming with a haunting mixture of sadness and hope. "You didn't help him," she whispered. "You left him behind." My heart sank. I couldn't fathom the weight of her words. "I tried. I tried to save them." "You can't save them. You have to find him," she insisted, looking over her shoulder. In that moment, a new wave of darkness swept through, engulfing her. "No. Wait." I lunged forward, but it was too late. She vanished before my eyes, leaving me alone to face the shadows once more. It didn't make any sense. Why did I have to find someone? I shook my head, feeling the familiar grip of dread close around me. I took a step back, my head barely above water in this sea of confusion. My breath quickened. Then I heard it again, the laughter. But it wasn't just the echo anymore. It felt close, and I realized it came from all directions, spinning around me like a chilling wind. I pressed my palms against my ears, trying to block out the noise. "Please, stop!" I cried. Suddenly, another set of footsteps approached, boots heavy against the floor. The sound was unmistakable, jarring against the whispers. I turned, eyes wide. Emerging from the shadows was a figure, cloaked and faceless. "You've ignored the truth," it rasped, its voice gravelly. "Time is running out." A sharp chill ran down my spine. I wanted to ask what it meant, to demand answers, but that only made me more terrified. "Who are you?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know where he is," it said, stepping closer. "But you must face the past." I shuddered at the implications of those words, feeling the air growing thicker with tension. The laughter crescendoed to a shrilling peak, drowning out my thoughts. Then suddenly, it turned quiet. Everything went still. "Do you want to find them?" the figure asked, and in the silence, its eyes pierced through me. I knew then that whatever choice lay ahead would come with a cost. "Yes," I breathed, abandoning the flicker of hope I had left. "Then step forward," it commanded, the shadows pulsating around it. I hesitated, uncertainty choking me, but the need to understand, to find that missing piece of the puzzle, urged me forward. Then everything shifted. The ground fell away, and darkness enveloped me once more. When the darkness lifted, I found myself standing on a street lined with old houses. The air was different here, cooler and filled with a sense of stillness. I looked around, trying to piece together what had just happened. The figure, the laughter, everything felt like a distant memory fading fast. I noticed a child playing on the sidewalk ahead, kicking a ball against the wall. I took a step closer, my heart racing. "Hey! You!" I called out, but the child didn't respond. In fact, he seemed completely unaware of my presence. "Excuse me." I shouted again, feeling desperation creep in. I reached out, but as my fingers brushed the edge of a shadow, the child vanished, leaving me staring at an empty street. What is happening? I felt the pull of something deeper, a thread connecting me to this place. I moved forward, each step echoing with a sense of urgency. The laughter had returned, echoing around every corner, enticing and terrifying me at the same time that I spotted a small building at the end of the street. The sign read "The Children's Home." My instincts urged me to go inside. Maybe, just maybe, I could find some answers. Pushing the door open, a musty scent wafted over me. The interior was dark, with old photos lining the walls, smiling children with bright eyes caught in fleeting moments. I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with guilt. I had no memory of this place, yet I felt tied to it. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. Silence enveloped me again. I took a few steps into the room. On a dusty table lay a box with the words "Lost Found" crudely painted on it. Curiosity piqued, I opened the box. Inside were various items: a faded teddy bear, a small pair of shoes, and a frayed piece of paper. I picked up the paper, my breath catching in my throat. Scrawled in messy handwriting was a list of names. Each one felt familiar, a fleeting familiarity that stung. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind a closed door at the back of the building. My heart leaped into my throat. I clutched the paper tightly as I approached the door, each step heavy with dread. It felt as if the whole world was holding its breath. As I reached for the doorknob, that laugh echoed louder, almost mocking me. I hesitated, doubt battling with the need to know. My fingers brushed the cold metal, and I turned it slowly. The door swung open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with shadows, and the shadows shifted. I stepped inside, and in that moment, I felt the weight of my past pressing against me like a thick fog, and then I saw him. A boy, no older than the child I had seen before, standing in the corner. His eyes were wide, reflecting a mixture of fear and familiarity that sent chills racing down my spine. "Come here," I urged, but he didn't move. Just then, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness once more. I could feel the laughter sinking into my thoughts, wrapping around me, pulling me deeper into this nightmare. I had to find the boy. I had to know the truth, but where was the truth leading me? I stepped further into the dark room, trying to make sense of what I saw. The boy stood there frozen, shadows dancing around him. I could barely see his face, but something about his expression sparked a flicker of recognition deep inside me. "Who are you?" I whispered, taking a cautious step closer. "I want to help you." He remained silent, his eyes wide and unblinking. Just then, I heard that laughter again, a sound that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. It was different this time, hollow, almost like it was mocking me. Panic rose like bile in my throat. "Please, don't be afraid," I said, though my voice trembled. But as I reached out, he flinched, stepping back into the shadows. The atmosphere felt charged, heavy with untold secrets. The room was cluttered with broken toys and old furniture. I turned my head, searching through the dimness for anything that might provide answers. My eyes fell on a dusty bookshelf against the far wall. Some books were old and worn, their spines cracked. Moving there felt instinctual. I felt drawn to it, the air crackling with anticipation. As I scanned the titles, something caught my eye, a leather-bound book titled "The Forgotten Ones." With trembling hands, I pulled it from the shelf and opened it. Inside, I found pages filled with names and photographs, children's faces, many with smiles that haunted me. Each name lined up with those on the crumpled paper I had found earlier. But there was one name that stood out: Ethan. As I read it aloud, the boy took a sharp breath. "Ethan?" I echoed. My heart raced. "Is that you?" He nodded, staying just out of reach, that familiar fear clouding his features. Then, I noticed something else, something scratched into the page beneath his name. "Help us," it read, ink smudged as if the words had been hurriedly written. My stomach churned. "Who are we?" I asked urgently. I needed to know what lay behind that pleading note. Ethan looked up at me, eyes glistening. Suddenly, the door behind me rattled violently. Startled, I spun around. The laughter grew louder now, swirling like a storm, and shadows surged toward me. "Get back!" I shouted, but I could feel the darkness pulling at my consciousness. I turned back to Ethan. He was still there, but now a flicker of anger crossed his face. "Don't," he whispered, taking another step back into the shadows, as if he understood something that I didn't. What was happening? Was this place more than just a home? I had to push through the fear. "Ethan, please. What's going on here?" The door splintered behind me with another forceful hit. I had to act quickly. I couldn't lose him, not now, not after finding him. I stepped closer to him. "I'll help you. Just stick with me, okay?" But then I could see a sudden change in the shadows around us, a figure looming behind Ethan. I felt cold panic grasp my chest. That's when everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness enveloped me. A weight settled on my chest, pushing the air from my lungs. I blinked, desperately trying to adjust to the absence of light, but nothing changed. The laughter echoed in my ears, loud and disorienting, shifting from playful to menacing. "Ethan!" I called out, my voice barely rising above the chaos. I reached out blindly, my hands trembling, hoping to find his presence. Instead, I felt a cold breeze sweep past me, swirling like a living thing. Then, just as suddenly, light poured in like a flood. I squinted against the brightness, trying to focus. The room had transformed. No longer cluttered with toys and shadows, it felt expansive and empty, almost like a hollow shell. Ethan was gone. I stood alone, fear gnawing at me. My heartbeat pounded as I scanned the corners, hoping to catch a glimpse of him again. But there was nothing, just the remnants of darkness retreating into the walls, the laughter reduced to silence. I took a hesitant step forward, adrenaline coursing through me. "Ethan." My voice cracked, but I pressed on. I had to find him. As I moved deeper into the room, I noticed the walls were lined with strange symbols. They pulsed faintly, and I could sense a strange energy radiating from them. I touched one, feeling a sharp jolt shoot through my fingertips. It felt alive, as if it were breathing, connecting me to something beyond my understanding. That's when I noticed a door at the far end of the room, slightly ajar. My heart raced again, hope flickering within the darkness. I crossed the space quickly, driven by the thought of Ethan. Pushing the door open, I stepped into a narrow hallway. It was cold here, and the air felt thick with tension. I paused, closing my eyes, trying to listen for any sounds. The silence was oppressive. Then I heard a faint whimpering coming from further down the corridor. Without thinking, I followed the sound, instinctively knowing it was connected to Ethan. At the end of the hallway, I found another door, this one heavy and splintered. I raised my fist to knock but froze, hesitation curdling in my stomach. What if it wasn't him? Just then, the door creaked open on its own. I stumbled back, heart racing. The dim light inside flickered, revealing silhouettes that danced against the walls. I squinted, trying to make sense of it all. There were more shadows moving around, and something twisted in my gut. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure dart past. Was it Ethan? I rushed in without thinking, driven by a mix of fear and determination. But as soon as I entered, the door slammed shut behind me. I turned quickly, dread pooling in my stomach. I was trapped. That's when I heard a voice, thin and quivering, "Help us." Panic surged through me again. I needed to know what this was all about, but deep down I was terrified of what I might find. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart as the voice echoed around me. "Help us." It was faint, coming from every direction, and I felt it crawling under my skin. The shadows flickered, moving with an unnerving rhythm, tendrils creeping toward me as if drawn by my fear. "Ethan! Are you here?" I called out, hoping the word would tether me to reality. The flickering light dimmed, wrapping the space in a thick, suffocating darkness, and the whimpering grew louder, almost frantic. I felt the walls close in around me, and with each pulse of the shadows, I sensed time slipping away. That I searched frantically, eyes darting around for a sign of him. There was more than just darkness here. It felt as if the very air was alive with desperation. Then, through the haze, a flicker of movement caught my attention. A small figure darted into view, and I recognized him instantly. "Ethan!" I gasped, lunging toward him, but he flinched as I reached out a trembling hand. "No! Don't touch it!" he cried, backing away into the shadows. My heart sank, understanding dawning on me that whatever haunted this place had manipulated him, and the very environment pushed him away from me. "What do I do?" I pleaded, desperation flooding my voice. "How can I help you?" Ethan's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, but there was something else, something that flickered with a resolute spark. "You have to find the truth." You need to remember, he whispered. A sudden ache pressed down on me, a sensation that tugged at memories I couldn't grasp. With all the energy I could muster, I concentrated on the haze of shadows clinging to the corners of the room. In that moment, I could almost hear the laughter of the children from before twisting in pain, their unity binding them to this forgotten place. You're still here, aren't you? I cried, feeling the churning chaos within me shift toward clarity. I promise I won't forget you. Just as my voice broke through the suffocating spell, the walls pulsed, and with it came a rush of names, familiar names rushing through my memory like a fast-moving river. I gasped, feeling the gruesome reality wash over me. They were faces I'd lost track of long ago, the childhood laughter replaced with sorrow. Is this what you wanted? I shouted into the darkness, the pressure inside me bursting forth and breaking the binding spell. It was then that the shadows recoiled slightly, the air cooling, almost released from their grip. A flicker of hope ignited inside me, galvanizing me forward. If you're lost, I will find you. I will remember. In a matter of seconds, light burst forth, radiating through the room. I turned to face Ethan, who now stood illuminated by the glow. Go! He cried, his voice stronger now. You can make it. Save us. His form began to shimmer, the boundaries of his being trembling as the light glinted off him. With no more hesitation, I bolted for the door at the end of the room. I could feel the presence of the shadows swirl and gather behind me, weighty and dense, urging me to turn back. But I pushed through, pouring every ounce of will into that single moment. Crashing through the door, I stumbled into a corridor lined with windows. Light poured in, illuminating my path. I turned back once, just in time to see the shadows retreating, crushed by the force of light, as if unable to bear witness to the revelation unfolding behind me. I raced toward the end of the hallway, breath caught in my throat. Was I truly escaping? The laughter had faded into serene whispers, and for the first time, the weight that had pressed on my heart began to dissipate. As the exit loomed closer, however, I felt a shift in the air. The familiar chill crept back, humming through the walls, bursting outside. I collapsed onto the grass, the sun shining brightly overhead. I sucked in deep breaths, the clean air filling my lungs for the first time. But as I scanned my surroundings, that familiar sense of unease resurfaced. I was free from the physical confines of the orphanage, but I could still feel those lost children lingering, their whispers carried on. The wind, not entirely silenced as I glanced back, my heart racing and questions swirling in the back of my mind. Had I truly freed them? Was darkness still woven into the fabric of this place? As I fled toward the relative safety of my car parked down the road, I felt a cold jolt, one last shiver of shadows wrapping around me, reminding me that my escape was not certain. It left me with a lingering question: were those memories strong enough to set them free, or were they forever encased in the darkness? And so, as I drove away, I glanced back one final time at the orphanage, its silhouette against the setting sun, beautiful and haunting. I didn't know when or if I would return, but the shadows lingered in my mind, challenging my every belief. Something profound had shifted within me, but I'd have to face the invisible echoes of the past alone. I'd never know the full truth, nor the stories that lived within those walls, but I carried their weight in my heart, far away from that place, at least for now.